morning, everybody, or good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm noticing a lot of wherever you're joining from, people joining in from all over the world right now, so we appreciate you taking the time. We're excited about this one, the new standard and unified CNAP with Singularity Cloud Security. Just a couple housekeeping tips. This webinar is being recorded, so there will be a live recording sent to your the email you used to register within 48 hours, I believe. And again, we welcome any and all questions. So if you have a question, by all means, we will make time to address those at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question for Nick and myself, feel free to put those in the Q&A tab, and we'll make time for that at the end of the presentation. So without further adu, let's dive into it. Just to further introduce ourselves, again, my name is Joe Coletta. I'm a 11-year veteran of the cybersecurity industry, and I'm the product marketing here at SentinelOne for the cloud security business. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Nick Davis, who I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Thank you, Joe. Very nice to see everyone. Lots of folks in the attendees list, so thank you for joining us. My name is Nick. I lead product management for our cloud security offerings here at SentinelOne, and I'm super excited to talk to you about it today.
Awesome. All right. So yeah, let's just again, quick journey about what we're going to be covering today. We'll just kind of start out with some, just setting the stage about what are some common challenges related to the cloud security realm right now, some common approaches, some pitfalls that a lot of the customers that we talk to are facing today. And then we'll kind of get into the view of how SentinelOne views the world, and then we'll kind of cap it off with a demo of the solution so you can see it in action. And then, like I said, at the end of the presentation, we'll make time for any questions that come through. All right. So before we go into our underlying philosophy around what a unified CNAP means, it helps to understand this. Cloud breaches don't always start in the cloud. Let that sink in for a moment. All right. So what I mean by that is attackers are typically trying to find whatever means they can to gain access to internal networks or cloud environments. They could start with a compromised endpoint, a stolen identity, or something as rudimentary as a phishing email. A perfect example of this is Scattered Spider, the hacker group responsible for the MGM hack in 2023. Scattered Spider has a reputation for using stolen credentials to access sensitive environments and move laterally across the cloud to get to their mission target, which is usually some sort of sensitive data store. And this is indicative of what we see other threat actors do based on other notable cloud breaches in recent memory and firsthand experience from our in-house managed services team. It will start with a phishing email on a compromised user, which then results in a compromised identity to do further reconnaissance on sensitive systems or on their user's endpoint. This will provide them with an AW access key, for example, to move laterally through the cloud, poking and prodding to see if they can exploit a vulnerability or a misconfiguration, to then gain access to cloud data stores like an S3 bucket, which is often where the most sensitive customer data is stored. So, and with organizations increasing their cloud footprint, these attack paths become much more pervasive and create a much larger blast radius. So security teams are constantly playing catch up with rapid deployment of cloud applications and infrastructure, which leaves a lot of critical assets unprotected. And cloud security teams have competing priorities with engineering and IT stakeholders. Engineering is focused on velocity, while IT is focused on stability and uptime. So operating in these operational silos creates barriers to early detection and it leads ultimately to compounding security debt over time. And again, like I said, cloud breaches can originate across multiple surfaces, including cloud, but also endpoint and identity, and requiring the use of multiple tools for ingesting cloud logs, EDR telemetry, and other sources to draw actionable conclusions or track malicious activity across surfaces leads ultimately to disconnected and cumbersome experiences. So ingesting siloed data without any sort of correlation allows issues to slip through the cracks and adds unnecessary complexity to investigation and response. So between untethered development velocity, competing priorities among cloud security stakeholders, and siloed data, what is the ideal approach to close the gap in your attack surface while also responding to threats as they happen? And the answer is really on two fronts. First, using proactive measures in the build time environments to flag risk before it reaches production. but also providing evidence so that developers actually understand the implications if these issues go unaddressed. Secondly is operating under the assumption that an attack is going to happen inevitably. Consider the application of AI technology to serve as a force multiplier for your analysts to recognize malicious activity and autonomously respond to attacks in real time as they happen. So this is where Singularity Cloud is uniquely positioned to kind of fit within that approach. So Singularity Cloud Security is meant to combine both proactive risk reduction with autonomous protection, providing a truly unified cloud security solution from build time to runtime. But what does that actually provide tangibly for your business? So first, at a broad strokes level, it gives deep visibility of your cloud assets deployed across your hybrid or multi-cloud environments. It provides autonomous real-time defense and response against AI-fueled attacks, because let's be honest with each other, attackers are using AI just as much as we are to propagate obfuscated malware or simply brute force their way into sensitive systems. So we also provide capabilities that enable true DevSecOps by shifting security further left and providing actionable evidence in the form of benign payloads for developers to populate a verified exploit path, so that developers actually have the evidence they need to understand this is an exploitable risk and we need to prioritize it. And lastly, we aggregate cross-surface first-party and third-party data, aggregated and normalized within a unified data lake for advanced investigation and response across not just cloud, but across endpoints and identities as well. So this provides a consolidated inventory of your critical cloud assets, how they map to onboarded endpoints and identities, and how seemingly isolated events could be an indicator of a coordinated attack targeting your cloud environments. All of that data is queryable using natural language queries provided by agentic AI to take the guesswork out of investigation and response. So to get a little bit more down to the details, our CNAPP is, again, fully integrated from build time to runtime and marries, again, proactive risk reduction and automated detection and response. We do this across three key components. First is our cloud workload security, which is our agent-based cloud workload protection platform using AI-powered detection engines. We also have our cloud native security, which is our agentless CNAPP solution, providing vulnerability, secrets, and exposure detection, while also providing, again, tangible evidence to the exploitability of findings, all of which is integrated within the CI/CD workflow. And then lastly is cloud data security, which applies the same AI-powered detection as our cloud workload security to find threats embedded within sensitive data stores like S3 and NetApp as well. So I mentioned how Singularity Cloud provides a build time to runtime experience. So again, I'll pass it off to Nick, who can elaborate about what that actually might look like in practice, and then he'll segue into a quick demo so you can actually see the solution in action. So Nick, I'll hand the floor to you now.
Thank you very much. So, we see a wide variety of attacks against cloud production environments every single day, whether it's through our managed services like our MDR team or our security research organization. We see this across the board. And when we talk to these teams about the patterns that they see, typically it boils down to three main stages that are probably not surprising to anyone on this call today. First and foremost is pre-compromise, right? Attackers are looking to get a foothold in your environment, and your cloud surface is a great way to do that because it's ever changing. I imagine a lot of you on the call today are familiar with your application teams deploying new versions of applications on a constant basis, changing the infrastructure being used to host those applications on a constant basis. And what attackers are really looking for are, one, a publicly accessible, vulnerable web application, two, misconfigured resources that are open to the public internet, or three, some form of exposed secret or credential that they can use to get access to that underlying infrastructure. And so finding a foothold in cloud production environments not only has a high return on investment, which we'll talk about in a second, but frankly, it's just easy. And once attackers find that foothold, we move to the post-compromise stage. This can involve a whole bunch of different things. I think there's really two categories here that are important to talk about. One is, sort of the privilege escalation lateral movement side. I'll talk about that in a second. But the other is even faster. They usually happen in parallel, which is monetary gain through things like crypto mining, right? So we see most attackers do both of these things in the post-compromise phase. They will, number one, drop some crypto mining payload to start making money off of your compromised infrastructure right away. But number two, they'll start to discover the environment. They might try to call what's the instance metadata services of the different cloud providers. They might try to exploit them. If you're using IMDS v1, for example, it's exploitable to SSRF attacks. They might try to interact with your Kubernetes control plane if you're running containers. We've seen attackers leverage the Kubernetes control plane to modify deployment or pull down known malicious container images or change what's running in those containers. And so we see drift at runtime. And then we also see exploitation, right? If there are vulnerable pieces of infrastructure, vulnerable containers, vulnerable compute, we'll see exploitation of that to move to the final stage, which is mission target. Now, this goes back to the beginning of sort of this little journey that we're going on here, which is the fact that cloud production environments have an incredible return on investment for attackers. And that's because your mission target is typically hosted there. And the mission target most of the time is data. Your customer data, your proprietary data, your sensitive data, a whole bunch of different stuff. It all resides in the cloud. I think I saw a few years ago a stat that said over 60% of the world's corporate data is now stored in cloud storage. I have to imagine it's a lot more today than it was a few years ago. And so, attackers will find the associated role, find the associated access key. They'll get access to that mission target data, those crown jewels, and they might then even use that data store to spread additional malware, upload, post-compromise stages to what you host so that other downstream applications access it. And so this is sort of that mission target stage. And we've designed our cloud security solution to try to, protect you end to end against these types of attacks. So this is a high level what we see across a bunch of different attack groups and a bunch of different real world examples of cloud breaches. We've designed a CNAPP portfolio to address these needs and to protect you end to end. But frankly, you shouldn't take my word for it. I think seeing is believing. And so instead of talking to you about slides all afternoon long, I think we should just jump into the product. And I'd love to show you what that looks like, how it works, and how we're taking a little bit of a different take to this space. All right, here we are. I'm going to ask Joe really quickly to make sure that I'm all set. Can everybody see what I'm sharing here?
You are live.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. So welcome to Singularity Operations Center. This is SentinelOne's platform and your UI, and what we've landed on today is our cloud security dashboard, and this is where we'll start. So to deploy CNAPP from SentinelOne, there's a couple of different things you do. Number one is our agentless deployments. You can agentlessly connect SentinelOne to your cloud environments across AWS, Azure, GCP, Oracle Cloud, Alibaba, you name it. You can do this at a per account basis. You can do it at an org or tenancy basis, manage OUs holistically. You can do it via ClickOps. You can do it via Terraform. We give you all of the choices. Once you're installed and once we're connected, we'll start to scan these environments. We'll enumerate all the different resources that we can find in these environments. We'll scan container images that we can find in your registries, and we'll begin to assess for misconfigurations and vulnerabilities. So you can see here, we found in my environment 22 critical misconfigurations, a whole lot more critical vulnerabilities. And we can see they're across mainly cloud resources. We have a few Kubernetes misconfigurations and even less offensive security findings. Remember this really quickly. I'm going to come back to offensive security findings in just a second. Like any good cloud security product, we also support a bunch of compliance controls. We know that compliance is super important in production environments. And so if you want to, you can come in and just look at all of the out-of-the-box compliance that we support from different CIS benchmarks, NIST 800, HIPAA, and even PCI. To give you an example of this, let's go dive into PCI really quickly and see what we're able to find and how it relates to the different resources in your environment. We're scoring a 95, 96% in PCI, which isn't really all that bad, actually. We have over 200 rules included in our assessment, and we're assessing many, many, many different resources. If we dive into some of the controls and subcontrols really quickly, we'll be able to see all the details that we might want to see here. So let's start with restricting inbound and outbound traffic. As you can see, we have a number of different misconfigurations here. Some of the controls are actually passing, right? We've restricted ingress on the ports necessary in Azure and GCP, but we're actually failing this in AWS. So I'd like to take a quick look. We'll show you what this rule means, what it relates to, the impact of that rule, and the recommendation to fix it. And you'll also see down here at the bottom something really important. We take what we call a common control framework to the compliance problem of Sentinel-1. And so we have a single misconfiguration rule cross-mapped to all of the different compliance frameworks that it relates to. So instead of burning down findings one by one, framework by framework, you can do it holistically all at once in a really action-oriented way. We can see all of the assets that are failing this in our environments. We can go view them in our misconfigurations view versus our compliance view, and we can even view the rule itself to understand the logic. But I'm going to pause on compliance for a second, and I'm going to take us back to security for now. So I mentioned before to keep an eye on offensive security. One of the things that Sentinel-1 does that is unique in the market today is that we have what we call verified exploitable exposures. To start with our CNAPP products, we take an inside-out view of your environment, just like many other cloud security providers do. So we'll be able to find attack paths that lead to public exposure, like, for example, an application hosted in a container that's vulnerable to Log4j, that's publicly accessible via a load balancer. It's a relatively straightforward example, and I'll show you what this looks like in a second. But Sentinel-1 takes it a much further step. We will actually then, from the outside in, test with a defanged, harmless exploit payload whether that public exposure is actually exploitable or not. And if it is, it raises to the very top of the list. We mark it as verified exploitable, and we show you the evidence of that, as well as the steps to reproduce. So I used Log4j as an example. Let's continue to do that. So we'll start with a simple misconfiguration analysis. We found applications vulnerable to Log4j remote code execution. A lot of tools can do this. You can find the vulnerable version of the library. You can correlate it with an attack path. This in and of itself is not so special. But what we do from there, I think, is quite special. So what Sentinel-1 will do is it will automatically and dynamically test for exploitation. So what our offensive security engine does is it sends this payload at that load balancer. So as you can see, this is the JMDI string that would cause remote code execution. And what we do is we point that at a domain server owned and controlled by Sentinel-1. And what we can see in the evidence is that, yes, indeed, this resource actually began to send DNS requests back to our DNS server, proving that not only is this application vulnerable to Log4j, it is provably exploitable for that vulnerability. And we've given you the curl command if you want to go test it for yourself. So this is an amazing way for you to work more easily with your application development teams, with your platform engineering teams, with DevOps, to help them understand the true impact of the vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that we're finding. Now, all of our cloud security products are backed by the Singularity platform, which means we have one unified data lake powering workload telemetry, events from third parties, as well as other products. We also have one underlying unified security graph for all of our cloud security, endpoint security, and identity security needs. And so let's go take a look at what this actually looks like in practice. If I go view this in the Graph Explorer, what you'll see is the full attack path. We've got our Log4j remote code execution passing down through a load balancer. And as we move through the AWS resources, we hit this EC2 instance, which is actually an EKS node. And what you can see in this case in particular is not only did we find an attack path, we found one that's under active exploitation. The reason we've been able to do this is because our CNAPP platform is not just agentless. We also have cloud workload security, like Joe mentioned earlier, which is our eBPF-powered, real-time, AI-driven threat detection and prevention product for Linux, containers, serverless containers, and more. And as you can see, in this attack scenario, our attacker has actually started post-exploitation. They've launched crypto mining, as we can see here. And SentinelOne is a really, really powerful workload protection story. We were one of the first in the market in 2019 to use eBPF for security, and we've continued to build on top of that innovation ever since. As you can see, we detected the crypto mining. We saw the related indicators of this. We see some LD preload. We see the crypto mining itself, execution of a script from memory, a whole bunch of other threat detection specific indicators. And we even have the storyline. Storyline is SentinelOne's proprietary technology that actually shows you all of the malicious behavior that's happened related to this exploitation. So as you see, we started with our Java process, which is where our log4j vulnerability is. Our Java process then launched a bash script. And you can see in the bash script here, this for the pool miner script. Not so hard to imagine what's happening, right? But we have all of that telemetry and more in line in our CNAPP product, ready to go, fully correlated with vulnerabilities, fully correlated with misconfigurations, pre-production and in runtime through our Singularity platform. So this is pretty interesting, right? We're able to correlate exposures and alerts, threats and risks all in one place. But we take it a step further because SentinelOne knows that detection and reporting are only half of the battle. What we really want to do is help you proactively prevent exploitation, and where we can't, because no wall is impenetrable, no lock is unpickable, we will help you respond, mitigate, and contain threats. So to give you an example of this, we can take mitigation actions. We can quarantine the file. We can kill the process. Let's take our malicious shell scripts for a second here, and we'll take a mitigation action, right? Let's quarantine the process, and maybe we can add it to the block list later. This will isolate the file with the malware from the production, and we've also run our kill process as well. Now, this is because our agent is running in detect mode. We could have run this in protect mode as well, in which case these things would have been automatically prevented at runtime. So this is great. We're able to see the end-to-end attack from the attacker in production, from exposure through to post-exploitation activity. But like most organizations, maybe your cloud security organization doesn't have the threat expertise that your SOC does, or maybe the platform engineering team is trying to understand if something bad really happened or not. Or maybe your tier one analyst has just never seen this type of attack before. This is where SentinelOne's expertise in AI and generative AI really comes into play. As you can see here, we have our Purple AI security overlaying our platform. Purple AI is enabled in this account, and as part of that, we get a couple of different interesting things. We get a human readable analysis of what this issue is and what's happening. But on top of that, we get some super interesting, what we call auto triage features on top of our cloud security products. So what you can see here is that Purple AI has run what we call a similarity analysis. What this means is that we have found, in a completely anonymized way, over 1,000 different alerts across the entire SentinelOne community that are for what we think the exact same activity, right? They look similar. And across those 1,000 plus alerts, what we've seen is that 98% of the time, the community believes that these alerts are true positive. That's across our experts within our managed detection and response SOC, across our partners and our customers as well. This is, again, all fully anonymized. It's impossible to reverse engineer where these alerts came from, but gives you a really, really strong signal. This is true positive malicious activity. And so we can take action from here like we saw. We can also go start a Purple AI-driven investigation, but I will save that for another webinar. Now, let's go back to our exposures. This all started with a log4j vulnerability and exposure, right? And so we saw that here, right? We showed that to you before. It's also available on many other assets. So there's lots of other cloud endpoints open to the public internet that we should deal with. We've stopped the attacker at the post-exploitation phase already, but I think we should now stop them from ever taking advantage of this again. Our CNAPP solution is fully integrated into our hyperautomation platform, which can allow us to orchestrate response beyond the endpoint, beyond the VM, beyond the compute instance. So for example, we have templates that allow us to lock down network ingress or create a pull request in GitHub to change the Terraform code or submit a Jira ticket to the application teams to review. All of this is in line, and we have a ton of out-of-the-box templates available to our cloud security customers that allow you to do this without creating any customization. All right, so that was a quick demo of our cloud security solution, cloud native security and cloud workload security together, acting in one place. I hope this was interesting to you all. And I think maybe now is a good time to stop for questions and see if there's anything that we can answer for you all.
All right. Thank you, Nick, for that demonstration. Yeah, let's go to questions. We have a handful that actually came in while you were giving your presentation, Nick. Let's see. First question coming in, are these features for CI/CD pipeline aimed to compete with vendors like Snyk and SecDevOps, DevSecOps capability and shift left concept, or to complement such type of vendor applications? So, Nick, did you want to touch on that, or did you want me to add some color? Go for it.
I'm happy to. So first and foremost, I'm glad you mentioned Snyk. Snyk is a strong partner of SentinelOne. Snyk and cloud security are fully integrated today in a bi-directional manner. So if you are using Snyk for container security, we can ingest Snyk findings into our solution to act as context, and vice versa. Snyk can ingest our runtime context so that you can better understand if there is a container image with vulnerabilities, is it running anywhere, and where is it running? So we like to take a broad ecosystem approach to security. We love our partners. We work really closely with all of them. That being said, whether you want to use multiple tools or use a single tool is really kind of up to you, the end user, right? We provide some complementary capabilities. We provide, container image vulnerability assessment. We also provide OS and application vulnerability assessment for Windows, Linux, and Mac. And you can use that directly within SentinelOne. Snyk obviously offers a much broader pre-production shift left story with things like application security that SentinelOne doesn't offer. So you may want to combine both. It's really up to you.
Awesome. Next question, is it possible to create a star rule? This sounds like a current customer question. Thank you for your business. Is it possible to create a star rule based on compliance frameworks? And if I identify a policy already configured inside my cloud that conflicts with that framework, an alert, for example, can that be created?
Yeah, let me actually, again, seeing is believing. I'm gonna share my screen again and let's walk through it together. So to come back into our demo here really quickly, you can absolutely create custom misconfiguration and exposure rules. We have full support for this. And you can create a couple of different types of rules in our system. You can create a Kubernetes misconfiguration rule. We didn't talk very much about KSPM yet in this webinar, but KSPM is a fully supported part of our CNAPP platform, and it's part of our single unified cloud security agent. So for those of you that use cloud workload security, either on servers, containers, or serverless containers, KSPM is a part of that today. So you can write KSPM rules. You can write cloud misconfiguration rules, also better known as CSPM rules, or infrastructure as code rules. We'll start with maybe a CSPM custom rule, and we'll move on. So you can do this across all the different cloud providers that we support. You can select a certain asset type. So, for example, I want to make sure that my SageMaker models have some specific set. And we use OpenRego as our rule writing language for what we call entity-based rules, right? So star, for those of you who are familiar with our platform, is the way that we create custom rules on events in our data lake, right? So that's more of a streaming event-driven detection rule system based on events over time, and you can do that with our event search policy. Any events that are coming into the platform, you can write a star rule on. So if you have CloudTrail data coming in, if you have events that are being generated by CNS, which does happen in event search, you can absolutely write a star rule on that. But for entity-driven rules, things where you're looking at the status of an entity, the relationships, the resource configuration, you'd write that in OpenRego today. So that's what that looks like. I think that answers the question, hopefully. So yeah, that's how that looks today.
Cool. Let's go to the next question then. The product is an interesting one. The product is able to identify weaknesses from within. Does it have the ability to scan or enumerate externally presented cloud applications where you may not have a connection in place, i.e. running a website on a third party's infrastructure where you want to test your site?
A little bit. So I want to be really clear with everyone on the webinar today. SentinelOne is not in the external attack surface management game today. So if you're looking for full-blown EASM capabilities, that's not something we offer right now. But you rightfully called out that our offensive security engine does test for weaknesses from the outside in. So we do have one really important integration that you can set up as part of our cloud security solution. Let me share my screen one more time. We can go back into that. You can actually integrate us with your Cloudflare domains as well. Let me see if I can find this really quickly. So here's our offensive security configuration. You can also set up domain name systems that we know about. So you can integrate us with Cloudflare. The only other thing that we integrate with today is the cloud provider native domain name systems and endpoints. So those are really your only two options at the moment.
All right. I think we have time for a couple more questions. Here's an interesting one. How is AI applied to cloud workload protection? How does it do against detecting novel or zero-day threats?
That is an excellent question. So, SentinelOne was actually founded on the idea of using AI and ML for security, and in particular to detect and prevent threats. There's two really important ways that we use AI for threat detection and prevention today when it comes to cloud workload security. The first one I already showed you, right? Purple AI, or generative AI technology overlaying our product and our platform, accelerating your ability to respond to attackers with things like auto triage, natural language investigations, etc. But way before generative AI became a thing, SentinelOne had a detection engine that we call static AI. Static AI is a set of AI ML machine learning models that are trained on over 500 million malware samples worldwide, and that number grows every single day. And what we do with that is that we can detect known and unknown malware as it loads into the workload, as it writes to disk, as it executes for processes. And so static AI is really our main claim to fame when it comes to using AI for threat detection and prevention. And it's one of the reasons that we're able to use our workload protection agent in the MITRE ATT&CK evaluations, for example. So we're really proud of our ability to use AI for workload protection. And like we said earlier, we've been doing this in the workload protection space since 2019. And so, we believe that we have a really mature offering in this area.
Excellent. All right. One more question coming in. You mentioned agentic AI as a force multiplier for SentinelOne. What would that look like in practice?
Absolutely. We looked at some of it already today. So Purple AI is infused in everything in the SentinelOne platform. It's able to answer natural language questions using your own data in the data lake. It's able to answer natural language questions about threat intelligence, both homegrown threat intelligence curated by SentinelOne and threat intelligence from our partners. It's able to summarize and analyze alert information and everything in between. So Purple AI, we've seen just providing incredible value to our customers. And if you've seen SentinelOne at any of the trade shows recently, you may have seen us run something that we call Mortal vs. Machine. If you ever get a chance to partake in this, I highly, highly recommend it. It's one of the most fun things I've ever done. Essentially what we do is we put someone who is completely unfamiliar with SentinelOne up against a security SentinelOne expert, like an absolute expert. The expert has to run an investigation and go through a security scenario with no Purple AI help. And the newbie gets to use Purple AI. To date, the expert has never won. The expert has never won. The person completely unfamiliar with SentinelOne, completely unfamiliar with the threat scenario, with Purple AI wins every single time. So I highly encourage you to take a chance and run through that with us. Or if you're an existing customer, you may be able to do it via what we call threat ops as well. So highly encourage you all to do that.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and thank you again.
Thanks so much for joining. Take care, everyone.